Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell Podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. Pleased to be joined by Dirk Connor, the head football coach at Perrysburg High School. Of course, that is in Ohio. You're probably like, why is Casey covering Ohio high school football? Well, there's some interesting things that are happening down there. Plus, I wanted to reach out to the Toledo area coaches and all that fun stuff. But of course, if you know the NLL and the NLL looks a little different this year with all the with the Catholic schools moving into the Catholic League in Ohio, like Central Catholic and St. John's Jesuit and all that. So figured enough we'd have them on to talk about their season, which starts next week. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. It's nice to be talking to somebody up in Michigan.
Yes, you never know. It's with this podcast, you can talk to anybody anywhere. So there you go. So I know that you've been practicing for the last 2 weeks. So for people that don't know, up here in Michigan, Ohio actually started a week earlier than so they've been practicing for 2 weeks, and their games actually start next week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's correct. So we've got a final scrimmage, kind of a live go after it tonight, and then week one is next Friday night.
Okay, so how have these weeks of practices been for you guys?
Yeah, good. I mean, it's status quo. It's been standard. We're getting our work in. You go in that camp phase where it's just all install learning and trying to figure out your kids. And so, we feel like we've done a good job of figuring out our kids over the last 2 weeks, but then also the kids learning systems and fundamentals and what they're supposed to know. And you get to the point in practice where it's time to play a game and prepare for an opponent. And we're excited to scrimmage tonight, but we're excited to get tomorrow to actually get in the film room and start taking a look at St. Francis and preparing for a real game.
So yeah, what has it been like these last few weeks, and what have you really kind of learned about your team, heading into that first game?
Yeah, I mean, I love our kids, but we work year round, so that wasn't a surprise to me. They're grinders. They work. It's important to them. Like winning matters to them, and trying to get better matters to them. And like every camp, you get a few positive surprises, a couple negative surprises, but we're right on track, and we like the product that we're going to put on the field.
Okay, let's talk about some of the returners and some of the guys to watch out for you guys this year. Let's start with the skill positions: quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, tight end, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so skill position returning guys, I mean, you're looking at Gavin Finnegan at wide receiver, who's been our number 2 receiver for really since about halfway through his sophomore season, and then all of last year as a junior. And he was behind a kid that's down at OU now, and so he's ready to step into that. And he's had a great camp and a great summer, and is really locked into to being a good player and the player we need him to be right there. Returner at running back Nick Oros. Nick's a quality high school running back. He's been our number 2 for the past 2 years, and he's been stuck behind a Division I kid in Connor Wallenczak, who's a pretty special player in his own regard. And so it's Nick's turn now, but Nick has a lot of carries for us. There were a couple stretches where Connor was hurt. Nick was our primary back when we beat Fairmont 2 years ago in the rain and had over 100 yards in that game. And so Nick's carried the load in big time games, and we're happy to have his experience back there to kind of take over for what was a generational tailback talent. And really, at the skill positions, those are our guys that are returning. And at the quarterback position, we're handing the keys over to Josh Tackett, who's a junior for us. And again, going back to what I said earlier, like football is important to him. He's worked incredibly hard to get himself where he's at, and he's a very smart quarterback. And there was a little bit of competition there, and he's come out and won the job. And over the past 2 years since he's been in high school, he's just really done a good job of improving himself, and he works every single day. He was recently elected captain yesterday by our team as a junior, and so shows the respect that they have for him. And I forgot to mention, running back wise, we also have a Joe Cini, who's going to be a junior for us that received carries last year as well, and he's well ahead of where you would expect a high school junior to be, and played really good football for us last year as a sophomore.
Right.
So.
Okay, let's go to the offensive and defensive line.
Yeah. So offensive line, without a doubt, the biggest question mark coming into the year. We lost 4 of our top 5 from last year. And, that's what people see, but what they don't see is we actually lost 7 of our top 8 from last year. And so that was the big question coming into the season. We had a couple of injuries during camp that shuffled that around. But, like you're always doing as a coach, we've done what we feel like we have to do to get our best 5 on the field. And they've done a really good job of coming together. And it's guys that need experience. I mean, they need experience, they need reps. And so we're looking forward to them getting another night better tonight. But, pleasantly surprised when we turned on the film from our scrimmage last Saturday morning at how well those guys played together. And again, we're happy about the group we're going to put on the field there. And we've got to build some depth there, though. I mean, top five have solidified themselves and absolutely earned the right to be the top five. But we need 6, 7, and 8 to be worthy of putting on the field on any given Friday night. And we're still working towards that.
Absolutely.
Defensive line wise, we bring back Eric Bush, defensive tackle, who was a starter last year. And then, we love the athleticism that we've got along that defensive line. And we have some defensive ends that have really been at least tearing us up in camp. And we hope that they're ready to do that. Once it's live action, we've got a new player that came out for us. That's, he's been a tremendous athlete around school but hasn't played football and decided to give that a go this year in Matt Hubbard. And he's been really, really good off the edge. And, the last 2 years that I've been here and Coach Ward's been the defensive coordinator for us, we've had some really good defensive ends, and he looks like he's going to fit right in with that group.
All right. Let's go to linebackers and the secondary.
Yeah, so linebackers, like I mentioned, last year Connor Wallensack got a ton of press, as he should have, generational talent right there. But right alongside of him was Joe Cini, who I talked about earlier. He started last year on what were 11-2, something like that, football team, and really progressed the first half of the season. And by the second half of the season, he's a kid that flashes on film, and that's flashing even when he was next to number 2. And, he's moved over to our Mike linebacker spot, taking that spot that Connor has voided and done a great job. I mean, he's everything you want in a Mike linebacker. And, again, going back to what I said earlier, he's one of those guys, football matters to him, and he works for football year round, and very physical player, plays very fast on the field. And, he's a heavy hitter, and we're glad to have him in the middle of our defense. And he's going to be flanked by a couple really athletic players. We feel like we have a lot of athleticism in our front seven. Abram Heyer and Braxton Medford are kind of taking those other 2 linebacker spots. And again, you're talking about kids that are, they're smaller. We don't have the 6'2", 215 at linebacker, but they move around well and really have a desire to get to the football.
All right. Let's go to special teams.
Yeah, so special teams, kicker is a young man named Taylor Thomas. He'll handle both kickoff and field goal duties for us. Last year, he was our kickoff guy, and was big leg, but was less consistent than the kid that took care of our field goal duties. But Taylor's put in a ton of work in the offseason and just been a really not pleasant surprise. We knew what we were going to have there, but he's been lights out, and we feel very comfortable that once the ball inside the 25-yard line, we can put 3 points on the board. And he's consistently putting the ball inside the 5 and sometimes in the end zone, and that's a tremendous weapon to have on special teams.
All right. Well, we've talked about all the players. Let's talk about the schedule. As I mentioned in the beginning, of course, a new era to the NLL. Of course, starting off against St. Francis de Sales on next Friday. I'll just run through the schedule really quick. Next Friday, August 25th, home at Marysville. September 1st at Fremont Ross. September 8th, home against Southview. September 15th at Clay. September 22nd, home against Northview. September 29th at Whitmer. October 6th, home against home against Finlay. Sorry, it's usually with these other schools, it's kind of hard to read a little bit. And then on October 13th, home on the road at Springfield, and then to finish out the season, home against Anthony Wayne. All right. So kind of talk about the schedule for a minute. Pretty good one, but just talk about the overall schedule you got there.
Yeah, well, like you said, overall, it's a really good schedule. I mean, it's well balanced. It's a deep schedule. There's no game where you walk out and just check mark the victory. That's for sure. And we're looking forward to the increased challenge with our schedule. Honestly, we think it's better for us in the grand scheme of things. And so we're looking forward to playing that ramped up schedule. And it's kind of phased in there. I mean, we look at our season in phases. We've got our 2 non-league games with St. Francis and then heading down to Marysville. And then, we play crossover games against the Fremont Clay and Southview, as you mentioned, and all 3 of those teams are going to be formidable opponents. And, it's kind of nice. We get 5 weeks of figuring out before something goes in our championship trophy win and loss column. And so, once we get through those 5, then it hits the back 5, which is really heavy hitters on that back end. And, we've got to be ready to go and it learned from weeks 1 through 5. And, that's where our championship season begins.
Absolutely. And Dirk, really, what do you really want to see out of your team in this in the scrimmage tonight, and then of course heading into that first game next week against St. Francis de Sales?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in the scrimmage tonight, we do no preparation for it. I mean, it's just been practice all week. So we're going to go out there against an opponent that, we haven't done any prep for. So what we're looking for is guys that get after it, come off the ball, attack. We're going to see looks that we may not have practiced for and things of that nature, but play your fundamentals, attack. And we want to see who can play physical football and who's going to go out there in attack mode, essentially, and make sure those are the guys we're getting on the field next Friday night against St. Francis.
All right. Well, Dirk, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us, and best of luck to you guys this season.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for getting me on.